Today, we're tackling adjustment and fill layers in image editing software. Think of this as your fast track to really understanding these tools.
Yeah, they're pretty fundamental for getting creative control, right?
Totally. And getting that control without, messing things up permanently.
Exactly. So we've pulled together some good stuff for this. We've got the official Adobe docs, which are great for the mechanics.
And nitty-gritty.
Right? Then some tutorials from places like Photoshop Essentials and Peach Pit. They show how it works in practice, which is super helpful.
And some basic explanations, too.
Yep, from GCF Global and Dummies, just covering the core layer concepts. So the mission today is really to get clear on how these layers give you that flexible, non-destructive way to edit.
Okay, perfect. And why should you care about this? Well, look, if you're editing photos for Instagram, maybe putting together a presentation, or even if you're just curious about how image editing really works.
This is going to be super useful.
It really is. Understanding adjustment and fill layers gives you so much more control and, crucially, helps you avoid those mistakes you can't undo later.
Get ready for a few aha moments, I think.
Definitely. Okay, let's dive in. First things first. What are adjustment layers? Like, fundamentally.
Okay, so think of them like a transparent film you lay over your picture. Adobe calls it a veil that colors the layers underneath.
A veil, okay.
And the cool thing is, by default, whatever adjustment you make, say brightness, it affects all the layers stacked below it.
All of them?
By default, yeah. And this is key, you can change that. You can tell it exactly which layers to affect.
Ah, okay. So it's like putting a filter over your photo, but you can choose exactly where that filter applies. And it's not permanent.
That's a great way to put it. And yes, the non-destructive part is huge. You're playing with color, with brightness, contrast, whatever.
Yeah.
But you're never actually changing the original pixels of your image.
That sounds incredibly useful. How do they look in the software, like in the layers panel?
You'll usually see them represented by a little icon, often like a white box or maybe a symbol related to the adjustment. And just like your normal image layers, they have opacity settings, blending modes. You can move them up and down the stack.
So they behave like regular layers in many ways. How do you know which adjustment layer is doing what?
They generally get named automatically based on the type of adjustment.
No.
So you'll see things like levels 1 or hue saturation 1. It makes it easier to track.
And making one is simple.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
There's usually a button at the bottom of the layers panel, often looks like a circle, half black, half white. Click that, choose your adjustment. Or you can go through the main menu, layer, then new adjustment layer.
Right, that little half moon circle thing. I've definitely clicked that before, maybe without knowing exactly what I was unleashing.
Yeah, it's powerful.
So what kinds of adjustments can you make with these layers? Give us some examples.
Well, there's a whole range. You've got things like levels that's fundamental for fixing the overall tones, the darks, the lights, the midtones.
Okay.
Then brightness contrast. Pretty self-explanatory. Hue saturation lets you mess with the actual colors, make blues more intense, change reds to oranges, that kind of thing.
Standard photo stuff. What else?
Well, you get into more creative things too, like gradient map. That one's cool. It maps the tones of your image onto a color gradient you choose. You can get some really wild effects or like stylized black and whites.
Interesting.
Then there's photo filter, which is more subtle. It's like putting a warming or cooling filter on a camera lens, just adjusts the color temperature.
Right.
And for more dramatic changes, you've got invert, which flips all the colors like a photo negative. Threshold makes everything pure black or pure white based on brightness. And posterize reduces the number of colors, giving it a sort of blocky graphic look.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's quite a toolkit packed into that one button.
It really is.
Now, you keep mentioning non-destructive. Let's dig into that. Why is using these layers so much better than just going up to the image menu and choosing adjustments there? What's the difference?
This is the absolute core of why they're so great. Those direct image adjustments, they change the actual pixels of your layer permanently.
Like baking it in.
Exactly like baking it in. Think of it like painting directly onto your photo print. Once it's done, it's done. If you apply brightness, then contrast, then maybe try to adjust brightness again, you start losing information.
Losing information.
Every time you make a direct adjustment, the software recalculates the pixel values. Do that repeatedly, especially with big changes, and you can lose subtle details. You might even see banding horrible stripes where smooth gradients should be. It's basically image degradation.
Yikes. Okay, that sounds bad. So adjustment layers avoid that.
Completely. Because the adjustment layer is separate, it's just calculating the change on the fly based on the layers below it, the original pixels underneath, untouched, pristine.
So you could make an adjustment, save the file, come back a year later.
And tweak that adjustment or even delete it entirely, and your original image data is still perfect underneath. One source called them undos that live forever.
Undos that live forever. I like that. That's huge.
It is. It gives you incredible freedom to experiment. You don't have that fear of messing things up permanently. It's all about flexibility. Reopen that file, change your mind about the color grading. No problem. No harm done to the original.
That really is a different way of thinking about editing.
It totally is.
Yeah.
There's a good example comparing levels. If you adjust levels directly, the image's histogram, that graph showing the tones, gets permanently altered. If you make a mistake, trying to fix it just damages it more.
Right.
But with an adjustment layer, the underlying histogram stays intact. You can always reopen the adjustment layer, see the original tonal range, and adjust it correctly without losing data. It's just safer, cleaner.
Okay, I'm sold on the why. So let's talk how. How do I actually create and use one? Say I want to brighten up a photo.
Okay, simple. First, look at your layers panel. Click on the layer above which you want the adjustment to appear. Usually you want it near the top to affect everything below it.
Or just affect one layer.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But for a general adjustment, click the topmost layer you want to affect. Or if you only want to brighten, say, someone's face, you'd select their face first.
Got it. Select the area or the layer. Then
You hit that Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer, button the circle icon, and pick Brightness Contrast, or maybe Levels from the list.
and the adjustment layer appears.
Yep, it appears right above the layer you had selected. And usually a Properties panel will pop up with the sliders for that specific adjustment.
Supposed to just fiddle with the sliders there.
Exactly. Move the Brightness slider, the Contrast slider, until it looks right. You see the effect live on your image.
Now, what about affecting just one layer, like you mentioned? If I only want to brighten the person, not the background.
Right, that's super common. That's where clipping masks come in. It sounds technical, but it's easy. When you create the adjustment layer, you can tell it to clip to the layer directly below it. One way is go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, choose your adjustment, and in the little box that pops up, click the option that says Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask.
Ah, okay, so it clips onto the layer below.
Precisely. The adjustment will only affect that single layer it's clipped to. You'll often see a little downward pointing arrow on the adjustment layer in the panel showing it's clipped.
That seems incredibly useful for targeted edits.
It is. And you can clip multiple adjustment layers to one content layer, or even clip a group of layers. You can also create a clipping mask after making the adjustment layer, usually by holding Alt or Option and clicking the line between the adjustment layer and the layer below.
Got it. So create the layer, adjust the settings in the Properties panel. What else?
Well, you can always click the little eye icon next to the adjustment layer to toggle it on and off. See the before and after instantly?
Oh, yeah, the visibility toggle. Essential.
Totally. And if you want to change the settings later, just double-click the main thumbnail, the one showing the adjustment type, not the mask on the adjustment layer itself. The Properties panel pops right back up.
Seems pretty straightforward and reversible, which is the main point.
Yeah.
Now, masks. You mentioned a mask thumbnail. How do layer masks work with these adjustment layers?
Okay, so every adjustment layer automatically gets a layer mask. It's that second thumbnail next to the adjustment icon. Usually starts out white.
White mask. What does white mean?
White means the adjustment effect is fully visible everywhere. Think white reveals. So a fully white mask means the brightness adjustment, or whatever it is applied 100% to all the layers below it, or the clipped layer.
Okay, white reveals, so black conceals.
Exactly. If you select the mask thumbnail, just click on it, and then paint on your image with a black brush, wherever you paint black on the mask, the adjustment effect disappears in that part of the image.
So I could brighten the whole image, then paint black on the mask over areas I don't want brightened.
Precisely. You're masking out or hiding the adjustment in specific areas. Painting with white would bring the effect back.
What about gray? Can you use gray?
Yes. And that's where it gets really nuanced.
Yeah.
Painting with gray on the mask creates partial transparency for the adjustment.
So like turning down the brightness just a bit in that area.
Kind of.
Yeah?
A 50% gray will let 50% of the adjustment effect show through. Darker grays hide more of the effect. Lighter grays reveal more. It lets you blend the adjustment really smoothly.
Wow, okay. That gives you incredibly fine control over where the adjustment happens. How do you see the mask itself while you're painting?
Good question. Couple of shortcuts. If you Alt-click, Option-click on Mac, right on the mask thumbnail in the Layers panel, your main image window will show just the black and white mask itself. Makes it easy to clean up edges.
Okay, Alt-Option-click to view the mask.
Right. Click it again to go back to the normal view. You can also Alt plus Shift-click Option plus Shift on Mac, the mask thumbnail, to see the mask as a red overlay on top of your image, like a rubylith. Sometimes that's easier for seeing where you're painting.
A red overlay? Interesting.
And if you just want to temporarily turn the mask off completely to see the adjustment everywhere again, you can Shift-click the mask thumbnail. It puts a red X over it. Shift-click again to turn it back on.
Okay, those shortcuts sound essential. Masks add a whole other dimension.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears slightly. Fill layers. You mentioned those too. What are they? How are they different from adjustment layers?
Right, fill layers. They're different because their main job isn't to adjust what's below. Their job is to fill the layer with something.
Fill it with what?
Usually one of three things: a solid color, a gradient, or a pattern.
So it's like dropping in a sheet of colored paper or a sheet with a gradient printed on it.
Exactly. And crucially, they don't automatically affect the layers underneath them in the way adjustment layers do. They just sit there filled with their color or pattern.
Can you paint on them?
Not directly, not usually.
Yeah.
If you want to paint on, say, a solid color fill layer, you typically have to rasterize it first, convert it into a normal pixel layer.
Okay. But they still have opacity and blend modes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can change their opacity, set blend modes to make them interact with layers below, move them around in the layer stack. All the usual layer stuff.
And they get named too.
Yep, named by type, like solid color 1 or gradient fill 2. And you create them using that same button in the layers panel, the circle icon. The top three options are usually solid color, gradient, and pattern to sack. Those are your fill layers. Or again, use the Layer New Fill Layer menu.
Okay, so same creation point. How do you actually set them up? Let's say I want a layer that's just solid blue.
Easy. Select where you want it in the layer stack. Click the button, choose solid color. The color picker pops up. You choose your blue, click OK. Boom, you have a layer filled with that blue.
Simple. What about gradients? They seem more complex.
A little, but still straightforward. Choose Gradient from the Fill Adjustment layer menu. A dialog box appears. You can pick a preset gradient from the drop-down menu.
Can you make your own gradient?
Totally. Click right on the preview of the gradient itself, and that opens the gradient editor. There you can add colors, remove colors, change how they blend, save your own presets. Lots of control.
And you can change the direction, like top to bottom or radial.
Yep. In the main gradient fill dialog, you choose the style linear, radial, angle, reflected, diamond. You set the angle. You can reverse it, dither it to make it smoother.
Yeah.
It adds a tiny bit of noise to smooth out transitions, helps prevent that banding we talked about earlier.
Ah, okay.
It's a cool trick. While that dialog box is open, you can actually click and drag on your image to move the center point of the gradient around. Really helps position it just right.
Oh, that's handy. Interactive positioning. Nice. And patterns. Similar idea.
Very similar. Choose Pattern Fill. A box pops up showing your available patterns. Pick one. Then you can change its size using the scale slider.
Make the pattern bigger or smaller.
Right. There's an option to snap to origin, which aligns the pattern grid. Link with layer is useful. It means if you move the fill layer later, the pattern moves with it.
Otherwise, the pattern stays put.
Yeah, the layer would move, but the pattern texture would kind of slide underneath it. Usually you want them linked. And just like gradients, you can click and drag on the image itself while the dialog is open to shift the pattern's starting point. Find the perfect placement. You can save pattern presets too.
And do fill layers also get masks?
Yes, they do. They automatically come with a layer mask, just like adjustment layers. So you can use black, white, and gray on the mask to control exactly where the solid color, gradient, or pattern appears. Maybe you only want the pattern in a certain shape, for example.
Okay, so masks are universal for both types, giving that selective control. What if you're done experimenting? You've got your adjustment layers, your fill layers, and you want to bake them in. Can you merge them down?
You absolutely can. You can merge an adjustment or fill layer with the layer directly below it. Or you can select multiple layers and merge them together. You can merge layers within a group, merge linked layers, or even merge all visible layers into one flat layer.
So lots of merging options. Any limitations?
The main one is that an adjustment or fill layer can't be the bottom layer of a merge. It has to merge into a content layer, an image layer, shape layer, etc.
Makes sense. It needs pixel data to merge with.
Right. And once you merge, say, a brightness adjustment layer down, that brightness change becomes a permanent part of the pixels on that merged layer. The adjustment layer itself disappears. It's no longer non-destructive at that point.
You lose the editability.
You lose the editability of that specific adjustment layer. Yes, it's now baked in. It's worth noting, though, for fill layers, you can also just rasterize them without merging.
What does that do?
Rasterizing just converts the fill layer, the solid color, gradient, or pattern, into a regular pixel-based layer. The fill is permanent on that layer, but the layer itself is still separate, And you can then paint on it or apply filters directly to it.
Ah, okay. So merging combines layers, rasterizing just converts the fill layer type. Got it. Let's zoom out again. How do these adjustment and fill layers fit into the whole layers concept in something like Photoshop?
Good way to frame it. So yeah, layers are like those clear sheets stacked up. You've basically got two main families. Content layers. These hold your pictures, your text, your vector shapes, your actual stuff.
Pronouns?
Yeah, good analogy.
Yeah.
And then you have adjustment layers. These are the adjectives or verbs.
Mm-hmm.
They modify the content layers non-destructively.
So an adjustment layer is a type of layer itself.
Absolutely. It lives right there in the layers panel alongside your image layers, text layers, everything else. It's not some separate function. It's part of the layer structure.
And the layers panel is command central for all this.
Totally. Viewing layers, creating them, editing them, masking them. It all happens primarily in the layers panel, usually bottom right or under the window menu if it's hidden.
And you mentioned blend modes earlier. You can apply those to adjustment layers too.
Yes, which is really powerful. Applying something like an overlay or soft light blend mode to a curves or levels adjustment layer can create much more nuanced and interesting tonal adjustments than just leaving it in normal mode.
Yeah.
It changes how the adjustment interacts with the colors below.
More to experiment with.
Always. And the beauty is, because it's all layer-based, when you save your file as a PSD or TIFF with layers enabled, all those adjustment layers, fill layers, masks, blend modes, they're all saved right there, ready for you to edit again next week or next year.
That eternally editable aspect really is the key benefit. Just to round out the picture, remind us briefly about the other main layer types.
Sure. So besides adjustment and fill layers, you mainly have image layers, your basic pixel-based photos or graphics. Shape layers, these are vector shapes, meaning they use math, not pixels, so you can scale them infinitely without getting blocky. You usually need to rasterize them to apply pixel filters, though.
Right, vectors versus pixels.
And My layers specifically for adding text, which often starts as vector data so it stays sharp when resized.
Okay, that paints the full picture. So let's boil it down for everyone listening. What are the absolute key things to take away about adjustment and fill layers?
Number one, they are your best friends for non-destructive editing. Experiment without fear.
Right. Flexibility.
Huge flexibility. You can always change your mind, tweak settings later, even delete the effect entirely without ever harming your original image pixels.
And masks give you control.
Masks give you pinpoint control over where those adjustments or fills are applied. Don't want to brighten the whole sky? Mask it out. Want a pattern only inside some text? Use a mask. It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, for me, that real aha moment is truly grasping that non-destructive power.
Yeah.
Knowing you can go back days or weeks later and refine that color balance or contrast without starting over or degrading the image, that changes everything.
It really does. It shifts your whole mindset about editing from something permanent and risky to something iterative and safe.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Now that you've got this idea of non-destructive layers, how might that apply elsewhere? Think about your work, your creative projects, maybe even other parts of life.
Interesting angle.
Where else could you apply metaphorical layers? Ways to make changes, test ideas, or add elements that you can easily adjust, revisit, or remove later without damaging the original foundation.
What other layers could give you more flexibility, more room to experiment and learn, knowing you can always tweak things later?
Something to think about. It's a powerful concept well beyond just pixels.